Skies above Ouagadougou were clear that evening, but inside the presidential command center, a storm was brewing. A message had arrived, encoded and anonymous, with just 7 words. They move at midnight. Your inner circle bleeds. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, president of Burkina Faso, stood silently before the wall of glowing monitors. The intelligence room pulsed with tension. Eyes darted. Fingers typed furiously. A foreign-backed coup was underway, and he had just 48 hours to stop it. This is the story of how a soldier-turned-statesman deciphered a code, unmasked traitors, and faced death with eyes wide open, to protect a nation teetering on the edge of chaos. The year was 2025. Burkina Faso had just celebrated its most peaceful harvest season in decades. But peace, as Traoré knew, was often a curtain hiding sharper blades. Behind every calm was a storm with foreign fingerprints. On June 17, at 11:42 p.m., an encrypted alert from a satellite tap arrived on the private presidential server. It didn't come through the official security chain. It bypassed protocol. It was direct. He read the message once. Then again. They move at midnight. Your inner circle bleeds. No name. No source. Just a chilling truth wrapped in code. He turned to Colonel Fad, his most trusted ally. Seal the room. I want all digital access traced. No one in or out. A few miles away, in a high-end villa on the outskirts of Ouagadougou, a secret meeting was already underway. 3 men, 2 Europeans and a Burkinabe general, were studying a map. Traoré is sharp. But even he can't fight shadows, said one of the Europeans, a former intelligence operative from France. By dawn, he'll be in chains or gone. Back at the command center, Traoré leaned over the encrypted monitor. His military training in electronic warfare kicked in. Run voice imprint crosscheck on all top-level generals in the last 72 hours. Compare with diplomatic calls to Paris, Washington, and Kigali. Focus on call silence gaps longer than 40 seconds. That's when they mute to hide. Data poured in like a waterfall. The room fell into tense silence. Within 17 minutes, one call stood out. A general's secure line went dead exactly during a meeting he claimed to be attending. The call had bounced through Rwanda. Traoré stared at the name. General Douamba. His godfather. His mentor. The betrayal punched him harder than any battlefield wound. The capital slept unaware as trucks full of mercenaries crept along the outskirts. The men inside bore no flags, only rifles and cold eyes. Hired from Chad, trained in Libya, paid by offshore accounts in Switzerland. By 2 a.m., they had surrounded 3 key zones: the Presidential Palace, the National Broadcast Center, and the Central Military Base. But Traoré wasn't in the palace. He was deep underground, beneath the old colonial tunnels that only 3 living men knew about. A map etched from memory guided him, his boots echoing off damp stone. In his hand, a single flash drive. Upload this to the secure drone. Set the course to Point Echo 7. Colonel Fad blinked. Sir, that's outside our radar range. That zone is French-controlled. Exactly, Traoré said, inserting the drive. Let them chase a ghost. I'll be elsewhere. The drone zipped into the sky, drawing radar attention. As expected, French satellites pinged. An hour later, a French reconnaissance team was dispatched north. It was a decoy. Traoré, meanwhile, had taken a motorbike south, disguised as a food courier. He needed to find the one man who knew the truth, Jamal Sanu, a former intelligence officer turned street preacher who once ran black ops in the Sahel. Sanu had vanished years ago, presumed dead. But Traoré had always known he was alive. And in moments like these, ghosts were priceless. They met near the abandoned train tracks outside Ouagadougou. Sanu looked older, his beard gray and wild. But his eyes were sharp. "I knew you'd come," he said, without looking up. "They're moving tonight. General Duamba, he sold us out." Sanu nodded. "Not just him. It's bigger. A $2.1 billion gas contract. Signed last week in Brussels. If you fall, they take the fields." "Names?" Sanu dropped a tattered file onto the dust. "Operation Iron Palm. Inside, surveillance photos. Bank transfers. Satellite maps. Voice logs. French intelligence. U.S. black sites. Rwandan brokers. Even a high-ranking ECOWAS official. And the scariest part? A fake video already prepared, showing Traoré being arrested for corruption. They want to paint you as a tyrant. Then justify military intervention. Traoré clenched his jaw. "Not while I breathe." He tapped into the underground comms network. "Patch me to all regiments. Priority 1. Prepare for Operation Anvil Dawn." His voice echoed across Burkina Faso's deserts, forests, barracks. Loyalists mobilized. Militants paused. Civilians whispered, something was happening. The lion was not asleep. At 4:17 a.m., black SUVs screeched into the palace gates. Mercenaries stormed inside. They found nothing. Empty rooms. Cold food. No guards. Then the doors locked behind them. The floor lights switched red. Gas hissed from the vents. Outside, Traoré watched through thermal goggles from a nearby rooftop. "Non-lethal," he whispered. "Just sleep." Seconds later, the mercs were down. At the same time, loyalist forces took the broadcast tower, replacing the pre-recorded fake video with a live feed. Traoré stepped into frame. Uniform. Medals. Steady gaze. "To the people of Africa. Tonight, they tried to break us. Foreign agents. Corrupt generals. But Burkina Faso does not kneel." Millions watched. On phones. In cafes. In markets. The video went viral. In Paris, officials scrambled. In Washington, denial. In Kigali, silence. Traoré wasn't done. Duamba was arrested at 6:12 a.m. in his villa. Traoré didn't order a prison cell. He ordered a table. 2 cups of tea. No guards. "Why?" he asked. Duamba's eyes, tired. "We were told it would stabilize the region. That you were too unpredictable. And you believed them." Duamba said nothing. "I loved you like a father," Traoré said. The silence was heavier than any gunfire. Duamba broke. Confessed. Signed. Revealed names. Gave coordinates. By 7:30 a.m., 6 more arrests followed. The coup was over. In 48 hours, a storm had risen, raged, and passed. But the man at the center had not moved. He stood. Unbroken. On June 19, tens of thousands gathered in Ouagadougou. They sang. They marched. They held signs. We saw the trap. He walked through it. Traoré gave no victory speech. He simply raised the old flag of Thomas Sankara. Then walked back into his office. A call came from Mali, "Brother, teach us how." Another from Niger, "Stand by. We're next." Africa was waking up. And in the quiet night, a lone voice in Burkina Faso whispered. "Our lion reads code. Our lion roars in silence." That same afternoon, inside the lavish corridors of the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, a hush fell over the Silk Hall. Delegates shifted in their seats. The summit was meant to discuss trade, but whispers of Traoré's defiance had hijacked the agenda. At exactly 3 p.m., the doors swung open. Captain Ibrahim Traoré entered, alone. No aides. No bodyguards. Just his uniform, dusty boots, and a presence so sharp it cut through the polished air. He walked slowly to the center stage, past marble pillars and golden emblems. The microphone screeched once. Then fell silent. Brothers. Sisters. He paused. The room stilled. The chains they place on our economies come with handshakes and champagne. But the blade always hides in the contract. Murmurs. Last night, I stared death in the face. Not from rebels. Not from terrorists. But from men who wore suits and smiled while signing my funeral. Silence. Burkina Faso was meant to fall. But we did not. Not because I am special, but because my people are awake. A standing ovation erupted. That moment was more than symbolic. It was a shift. The young presidents of Mali, Guinea, and Niger approached him backstage. We need a new code, one said. Not just resistance, said another. Resilience. Traoré nodded. He reached into his jacket. From the inside pocket, he pulled out a worn notebook, Sankara's original economic blueprint. Annotated. Updated. We begin tonight. That evening, in embassies across Ouagadougou, flags began to drop. France. Withdrawn. The EU liaison building. Shuttered. The US aid compound. Evacuated quietly by midnight. On rooftops, Burkinabe youth watched it all with wide eyes. A tweet went viral. They left when they couldn't buy him. But not all battles were visible. In the cyber realm, attacks on state servers increased tenfold. News stations faced massive DDoS assaults. Rumors flooded the net. Traoré had been overthrown. Assassinated. Exiled. Every rumor was a bullet. But Traoré fired back with silence. Instead of reacting, he built. The state launched a new media platform, Vérité Afrique. No ads. No Western sponsors. Just stories from the ground, farmers, soldiers, single mothers. And truth. Viewership exploded. By week's end, it had 4.7 million subscribers. The battle was no longer for territory. It was for narrative. And Traoré was winning. 2 weeks later, deep in the Sahel, Traoré visited a village long abandoned by maps. No roads. No signal. Just sand and silence. They said the rebels ruled here. He came anyway. Rode in on a single bike. No convoy. No cameras. A child with burnt feet walked beside his mother. She didn't recognize the president. "You've come too late," she said. Traoré knelt beside the boy. Pulled water from his canteen. Wrapped the foot in his scarf. "I'm sorry," he said. Then stood. "But I won't leave late." He turned to the stunned villagers. "We're building a clinic here. Solar. Mobile. It moves with the people. And a school, one that speaks in Fula, Moor, and French." A tear slipped down the mother's cheek. "We heard many say the same." Traoré looked her in the eye. "Then let my hands prove my words." That night, his team slept in the sand. And by morning, trucks were already rolling in. Back in the capital, Traoré sat in his private office. The desk was bare. Except for two things. The original warning note, "They move at midnight." A new map of Africa, hand-drawn, without borders. Colonel Fahd entered. "Sir. The IMF just froze the loan. Paris is pushing sanctions. ECOWAS threatens expulsion." Traoré didn't flinch. Let them push. Let them freeze. He leaned over the map. They moved at midnight. But we move at dawn. The wind howled like a beast across the Sahel as night fell on Ouagadougou. Inside the dimly lit situation room beneath the presidential palace, Captain Ibrahim Traoré stood silent before a large digital map. Red dots pulsed across the screen. Each marked a threat. A general. A foreign agent. A double-crossed ally. It was the 47th hour. He had one left. General Bambara's betrayal had torn the heart out of Burkina Faso's fragile unity. Traoré had uncovered the conspiracy, decrypted the coded instructions hidden inside European bank transfers, and even survived an assassination attempt. But this was not over. Intelligence reports now pointed to a final blow. An armed convoy was en route to seize the National Broadcast Center at exactly 3 a.m. If they controlled the airwaves, they could declare a new regime. Traoré turned to his team. We will not give them that dawn. We strike now. Operation Night Eagle was born. At 1:45 a.m., Traoré led a hand-picked unit of 12 elite commandos through the back alleys of Ouagadougou. No armored vehicles. No satellite comms. Just silence, shadows, and purpose. The streets echoed with tension. Inside every shuttered shop and dark apartment, citizens held their breath. They had seen coups before. But this time, something was different. This was not a war for power. This was a war for dignity. At 2:03 a.m., they reached the broadcasting station. Already, rebel forces had occupied the outer perimeter. General Bambara, confident in his victory, was preparing his speech. But he never got to deliver it. A deafening explosion shook the compound as Traoré's team breached the rear entrance. The gunfight that followed was fast, brutal, and surgical. One by one, the traitors were disarmed or fell. Bambara tried to flee, but was cornered in the transmission control room. Traoré entered last. There stood the man who had once sworn loyalty, now shaking in a stolen uniform. Why? Traoré asked, voice low. Bambara didn't answer. But the fear in his eyes told the truth. He had never believed a young, idealistic captain could hold a nation together. He bet on foreign gold and old generals. He lost. At 2:47 a.m., with the enemy neutralized, Traoré stepped in front of the live camera.